Hello, welcome to another show of New Hampshire Citizens for Progress. Thank you for watching. I hope you find this interesting. The show's on what the frack is going on.
It is not safe. It's not worth our lives. We don't want to be the human sacrifice zone. And that's what we've become, or the human guinea pigs.
Right in the report states that due to their gas drilling and fracking operations, they contaminated our water. They admit it.
We're still being sick, and that facility is still decaying, and as their own documents say so, and we're still all in deep, you know what, living next to the thing.
And I don't want to just sit here and die because of that stuff. I want to get out of here.
It's not fair at all. I mean, these are people's lives that they're playing with.
Houston, we have a problem.
We shouldn't be sacrificing people for our energy needs, and that's like the bottom line.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Dube, and I am Pipeline Resistance Organizer with 350 NH. 350 NH is a grassroots movement that is dedicated to stopping climate change and saving our economy by building a strong and resilient community of activists who oppose the expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure and are working to shut down the last coal-fired plant in New Hampshire that does not have a shutdown date. And we push our leaders to develop renewable energy, such as solar, and also like the Gulf of Maine wind power project. One of my primary responsibilities at 350 NH is to work to build opposition against the Granite Bridge pipeline that Liberty Utilities has proposed. That pipeline project is a 27-mile fracked methane gas pipeline, along with a 2 billion cubic foot liquid natural gas storage tank that would be sited in Epping. The pipeline would run along Lake Massabesic, threatening Manchester's water supply, and it would run out to the seacoast. We also are working on the No Coal, No Gas campaign, which includes shutting down the coal-fired plant in Bow.
I'm Adam Rice. I'm from South Portland, Maine. I'm involved in a lot of organizations. The primary three right now are Extinction Rebellion Maine, the People's Housing Coalition, which is a Maine statewide collective of tenants, landlords, lawyers, and journalists working to provide affordable housing to people, And I've also been involved with the Maine People's Alliance, doing grassroots lobbying for bills that protect people in the state of Maine in a variety of issues. And most recently, I've been on a Maine affinity group with the Climate Disobedience Center, where we've been participating in actions at the Weymouth Compressor in Massachusetts and the Bow coal-fired plant in New Hampshire, both of which do have ties that affect Maine that we'll be getting to later.
And I'm Nathan Phillips. I'm a scientist and a dad. I teach at Boston University, and I've been working with a group of residents and their allies in a town south of Boston called Weymouth, where a real injustice is playing out with regard to Enbridge Corporation attempting to build a blow-down transmission compressor with all of the toxins, and it's a carbon bomb, you can call it as well, and it actually affects all of New England, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. And in fact, even today, the spillover effects of the toxic materials that are on the foundation in which they want to build that compressor, coal ash with arsenic and asbestos, is being spread today, we confirmed, into New Hampshire, and we'll talk about that later today.
I think one of the things I'd like to start off with is Bow. I mean, some of the issues, this plant is essentially being used as a pica unit. Presently, it's only seen about 28 days of use. We can't do anything about the money that's already been spent on the scrubbers to make this a cleaner facility. Disappointingly, that question whether that money was well spent or not is, well, it wasn't. That we could have weatherized many people's houses. So there's been actions in regards to that everyone here has been. Are you familiar with the mercury issues and some of the hazmat materials around a coal plant, Nathan?
Well, yes, in terms of the coal having those materials in them and being liberated when coal is burned, so into the air, as well as the residue and leftovers from the coal burning that goes into the soil and contaminates the soil. And so that is part of what's coming out of this town of Weymouth, is the removal to build the compressor. They're removing toxic coal ash with arsenic and asbestos and all kinds of other metals, including mercury, selenium, and they're being driven across Massachusetts and driven into New Hampshire without those trucks being cleaned, and so it's a real concern.
The 350, are they doing any, you mentioned earlier that they're doing something in specific in regards to Bow being retired, and is there a way for people to become involved? What is it that you're doing?
Yeah, so the campaign that we're working on is called the No Coal, No Gas campaign, and we are working with the Climate Disobedience Center specifically on forcing the shutdown of the Bow coal plant, which is called the Merrimack Generating Station because it sits on the Merrimack River. The Merrimack River is being polluted by the coal that's being burned in this plant, which is only running about 28 days a year and generates less than 1% of our capacity. So it's really not needed when money could be spent subsidizing things like solar and wind. If people want to get involved in this campaign, they can go right online to nocoalnogas.org and sign up to support the forcing of a shutdown date to this plant and get involved with us on different actions that we'll be taking coming up this spring after the New Hampshire primary.
Adam, you've been real active in regards to these issues. I mean,
That's an understatement.
you risked health, life, and your freedom in some of the actions you've taken. Could you share with us what makes you feel so strong that you would do that?
Sure. And I guess I'll start answering that with a question. How free are any of us if we object to a project like Bo or this compressor station and they build it anyways? I learned in Weymouth that you guys have open appeals still going. They're doing construction anyways. I live in a state where 70% of us have rejected a power corridor into Maine, still being built anyways. So, when you asked me earlier, I mentioned, how you could trade your own freedom or risk your own safety to protect others, and doing nothing is like sacrificing the safety of an unnumberable amount of people. The whole community of Bo is not being fairly represented in this matter. And, when I put myself on the line in hopes of getting that shutdown date, it's to protect these communities and protect this water. You mentioned like the mercury pollution. When I was reading on the plant, a fraction of a teaspoon of mercury can make all the fish toxic in a lake or a river or a pond. And it's nearly impossible to count the damage that we're causing when we don't do things like this. And this, to me, is just the only way I can really change something in these communities.
One of the things I think that we fail to tie in when we discuss quite a few things, whether it be health or the energy development, is this is affecting people that are, in fact, suffering ill consequences, dying, cancers, disease, sickness, breathing problems, and these tend to be true around areas like this. And Jennifer, you're working on a project where this fracking is taking place. We don't get to see the results of some of this things that are taking place in the communities that are actually experienced the fracking. Can you share with us what that is so that we might be able to understand that?
Sure. So one of the things that I've learned while working on the Granite Bridge pipeline project is that it would be transporting fracked methane gas from the Marcellus Shale area, which is located in Pennsylvania and New York primarily. And most people don't realize that natural gas is literally fracked methane gas. Fracked methane gas comes from hydraulic fracturing. They inject billions and billions of gallons of water down into the earth to force open cracks in the shale that's down there. And then all kinds of toxins and sand are pushed down into those cracks to force it open and to force gas to come up. Only about 40% of that toxic wastewater is actually recovered. The rest of it stays down in the earth where it just contaminates all of the area around it. And actually some of the illnesses and things that people are suffering from the effects of this hydraulic fracturing, I have a whole list of them here. Poisoned water, they can't bathe in it or drink it. Dead cattle and quarter horses, deformed newborn farm animals, stillborn puppies, sick school children, swarms of earthquakes, nosebleeds, vomiting, diarrhea from radioactive poisoning, difficulty seeing, hearing, breathing. Home values are worth nothing. They have no resources to move, and they're bankrupted by illness and medical bills.
Jennifer was just explaining to us some of the consequences that the people are experiencing where the fracking is going on. But that's not the only place in regards to the pipelines and the material being transported here in New Hampshire. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So when the gas gets transported to New Hampshire through the pipeline, it's actually leaking fugitive emissions is what they're called. And the gas is methane when it comes through there, which is 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide, which exacerbates the climate crisis. And not only that, this pipeline would run along Lake Massabesic, which is Manchester's water supply.
This well, I guess I wanted to go to the compressor station, but the thing I want to make people aware of in regards to that is not everyone is going to experience these negative consequences. It's the people that live or work nearest where this takes place and happens. And Nathan was going to tell us a little bit more about the Weymouth and how this affects people there and how it affects New Hampshire citizens as well, along with Adam.
Yeah, because this is a pipeline, it's connecting these communities and the health impacts all the way from the fracking fields in Pennsylvania through Weymouth and the Fore River Basin there south of Boston, and all the way up here through New Hampshire, Maine, and into Canada. And so the community just in the Fore River Basin, Weymouth, Massachusetts, there's already a higher incidence of neurological problems, respiratory problems, and cancers, rare cancers in that basin. It's already a heavily industrialized area to start with. And this compressor would be adding even more to that, because these transmission compressors, they're intended to vent raw fracked gas right into the atmosphere and into the neighborhoods. This is a highly urban area. There's over 100 volatile organic compounds in that fracked gas that will be vented straight to the atmosphere, including benzene, toluene, xylene, things for which there's no lower limit for human safety. And so that's a huge problem that the community is facing and fighting back, contesting every single activity of construction that's happening on that site right now. Now, part of the plan that Enbridge has proposed and the state of Massachusetts actually accepted connects that injustice and the health impacts right here to New Hampshire. So the consultant for Enbridge, they have to dig up 1,100 dump trucks full of this toxic coal ash. That's literally the toxic foundation on which they want to build this compressor station. And that, as I mentioned before, that coal ash has a history, a legacy of contaminants in that material, including arsenic, all of those other heavy metals, and these burner bricks, these furnace bricks, hundreds of thousands of them from earlier coal-fired plants. And some of those burner bricks contain up to 80% asbestos, which causes mesothelioma, and these are fatal conditions. Today, we tracked and verified that a dump truck left the site in Weymouth today and dumped this material in Rochester, New Hampshire, at the waste management facility about 35 miles northeast of where we're sitting here today. So everyone needs to know about this, and everyone needs to put a stop to the spreading of this toxic material throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and throughout New Hampshire as well.
So, there's a couple things that I wanted to tie into this before we finish, and I've been raising awareness for both the Bow plant and the Weymouth compressor as regional issues. Bow, everybody who pays rates in New England is subsidizing this plant. We're spending up to $50 million a year propping up coal, when the cost to transition this plant to a clean, renewable energy source would be between like $3 and $10 million a year last I checked. So that's taking the money that we could be using to solve the problems and funding the problem itself. With Weymouth, you can look right on the Enbridge site, and I always encourage people to actually fact check me. Go and look yourself on the Enbridge site under the Atlantic Bridge Pipeline Project. That would continue from the site in Weymouth through New Hampshire to Maine, at which point it would divert northeast into Canada, expanding a lot of the existing pipeline infrastructure and adding more. But right on their website, it says the Weymouth compressor has to be completed to be able to actually shoot this fracked gas north into that expansion area. So if this is stopped, it's a reasonable assumption that we could prevent or at least slow down a lot of these other projects that many people want to reverse and get rid of. and the group Fore River Residents Against the Compressor Station recently did a little bit of a documentary interviewing some of these people affected in this community. Now, imagine if you're digging up the things that are giving these people these health problems. You're driving this toxic soil hours across the highway. It's blowing into your rivers. It might be blowing into your car window or settling on your house, and they're over and over and over again. That's a big concern to me. Just like the coal trains, these dump trucks are going to potentially be blowing this dust everywhere. And one thing I've learned coming down and connecting with you guys in Massachusetts is they're not following safety protocol. Their workers are not wearing respirators. They're not wiping the dust off the trucks. They're not taking things into account like toxic particulates in the air or settling on the ground. So why would I assume these trucks are going to do that? Probably not. So, we're asking for community accountability for these types of projects and other ones. New Hampshire has a dump site that they can be vocal about. Maine has one in Norridgewock that Maine can be vocal about, and possibly enough outcry about dumping the soil in our states might cause them to have to go back to the drawing board and figure something else out.
I think what I want to say from here is, we pointed out a lot of ill health effects, whether it's the people in Pennsylvania, where New York actually banned fracking, so we're not going to be getting the frack gas from New York at this point. So Pennsylvania, it's the people that live there that we're not aware of that are suffering the consequences. And then we have the various routes, the compressor stations, and other facilities that deal with this, right up to the dump in Rochester, which this would be you guys have enough problems down there with your water supply and the quality of water there with everything that's going on. And the big thing is this is not just numbers. This is someone's grandparents, father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, niece, nephew. These are real people, and their health is being curtailed, even to the point of dying or long-term negative health benefits. And Adam touched on some of the economics in regards to spending our money effectively. Well, there's a part that nobody discussed here, was the part of the infrastructure. When they're actually doing this not to supply the existing gas and heat that you need for your houses. They're doing this to expand their market. Part of that was they presented one of the highest possible capital expenditures. The capital expenditure gives them the ability to raise prices through the Public Utilities Commission. So the higher the capital expense is, the more they can justify a price change. And they selected the most expensive project possible. Now, when they expand their client base, that means you, the people that live in the area that they would be servicing, have to change your heating. And if you're not getting natural gas right now, well, you're going to have to change to it, because that's going to be the available of heat. And that's the expenditure you have to assume, how long this is going to last, how long it's going to be a source of energy, and should it be a source of energy to begin with anyhow? That almost seems to be the debate we should be having, is this the source that we should be pursuing for our needs? Or are there other sources? We could spend, Adam pointed out, solar, Jennifer touched on the Gulf of Maine wind power, but weatherization also. There are many passive geo. Our grandfathers and parents knew these things well. Houses were built with a southern exposure, with exterior porches that acted as an insulator and collected heat. Their foundations went below the frost line, where your basic temperature is 55 degrees. So if you're able to, that makes it a little tough on existing structures, but new structures, that's just a passive solar design that you're starting at a 55-degree temperature, where you have to change the interior temperature from that and not the exterior temperature of the air itself. There's so many different things that we could spend time with and money and be much more effective and not have as so many negative health effects on our fellow citizens. Well, I believe we're just about out of time. I want to thank you all for watching this show, and hopefully from this you might have thought of ways that you will use this information to participate and help protect your fellow citizens. Thank you. Take care. Be well.